to Lessons Learnt. This is week 3 and row 2 of our Jelly Roll book Sew Along. And today we're going to be using book number 2, the Jelly Bar book volume 2. And we'll be turning to page 36 where you will find Providence Quilt. We're going to make 3 blocks of this pattern, and here you see the block is just a simple, I think that's called a sawtooth block, I'm not sure, but we are going to make sure that the inner part of the star is our background fabric that we're using. You could potentially reverse that and put your background where these colored pieces are, and then make your star colorful. I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to use my black that I have here that I've been using for my background, and you will need to follow in the instructions here. The measurements are laid out in A, B, C, and D. C and D are what you need to cut out of your background, or in my case, the black. A and B are out of your colored fabrics, your patterned fabrics. And there's going to be 2 different cuttings, 2 different pieces that you're size-wise that you're going to have to make. But you're going to want to mix them all up or do something that's very colorful, not something that's all one color. You could, if you're doing a 2-color quilt out of this, then you would have your background color and then all of these would be the same color. And you would need to cut the sizes A and B. Now, let me tell you, if you want to go ahead and make a note, I will put this in the description box, but I'm going to tell you how many you need of each piece, A, B, C, and D. But the measurements for them are there in the book, so you need to follow those measurements. But for A, you need 12. B, you need 12. C, you need 3. And D, you need 12. So following the size that it shows there for A, B, C, and D, those are the amounts you need of that size. So now, having established that this background will be the big white star that you see here, mine will be black, I need to select from my fabrics these colors. So I'm going to try to make them as different as I can without getting confused, but these here around the edges, not the corners, we'll talk about that in a minute. But on each side, that is a rectangle. So you're going to need to cut rectangles that size right there. And that's your block number, that's your block A. So you see what size that is? So you need 12. You need 4 for each of your 3 blocks, but they need to all be different. So what I'm going to do, I have 2 pieces in my K-Facet bundle, my fat quarter bundle, that are the same, but they are cut in different places. So I'm going to cut all 12 of mine out of this, making sure that I get all of the different colors in them. I think that'll work. If you don't have a setup like this, where you can cut your 12 rectangles out of this material, this particular K-Facet fabric, then just go through your fabrics and what you're using and pull out 4 different ones for each block. Now you can make all 3 of your blocks exactly the same, but just make sure all of your colors are different. Now you can make them all different too, so there's no rule about which colors you need to use. They just need to be different. You don't want to create a secondary pattern with these colored pieces, if you know what I mean. Secondary being like if I made these two the same color, it's going to look like a separated diamond shape. I don't think that would be good. But you do you. If you're okay with just kind of willy-nilly picking out your fabric and you're confident like that, go for it. But I'm going to try to get my 12 pieces all different in all 3 blocks. Somewhat different. I'm using these 2 pieces. It's the same fabric, but I should be seeing way different colors in the block overall. So that's what I'm going to do for my A rectangles. I'm going to cut those 12. And then my B squares that go here, also you notice that those are all different colors. So you're cutting 12 of those, of that size. And the picture shows here that you could, actually this picture here shows that there's a lot of variation in how the colors are placed. Some of the things are the same, like this secondary pattern diamond here is the same here as it is over here. I mean, I think that's okay, but you can see that if you were putting your 2 blocks right side by side, you would form a solid diamond. Now we are going to have some sashing between the blocks, so that's not as much of an issue in this. I hope this makes sense to you. But you're going to need 12 of these squares, and that is B, whatever size it says there to do that. So C and D are 3 big squares here. And then you're going to have 2, 4, 6, 8. You're going to have, let me make sure I'm looking at this right. I think you're going to have 12 of those. Is that right? Yes. You will. No, you won't. You'll have 2, 4, 6. You'll have 24 of those. So you need 24 Ds instead of 12. I think I said 12. Pretty sure you need 24 because you're going to be putting one on top of this rectangle and another one on top of this rectangle, and there's 8, so 8 times 3 blocks is 24. So scratch my original D being 12, it's 24. So you need 24 of that size, 3 of C. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my blocks out, and then I will show you how that looks from there. Oh, and I was going to tell you too, the fabric that I am using for those colored squares is the ones that I used last week on the first row. I cut out this much for those hearts, and I'm going to cut out what I need again out of these same prints. There are 6 of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut the same thing and then cut it in half and use all of those. That'll be 12. The 12 that I need for, and that is block, that's piece B. So that's what I'm going to do. I will have some overlap in some of that. But if I don't like it, I can always pull in another piece or 2 and vary it a little more. But I think it'll be okay. We'll see. I can always change my mind, can't I? Sure. Alright, let me cut this and I'll be right back. Here we go. Everything's cut out. You have 3 of C. You have 24 of D. And then also this, you'll need 2 of these that are 5 by 10. This is what goes between the blocks. It's not 5 by 10. It's 5 by 19. I just realized I cut those wrong. Let me cut those again. Alright, everything is cut. And I'm just going to review with you again exactly what to cut. And remember, in our book we have measurements for A, B, C, and D. So A is this group right here, and you need 12. B is this group right here, and you need a 12. And then C is your background, black in my case. You need 3 of that measurement. And for this measurement, for D, you will need 24. Now that's what comes out of our book. In addition to this, for the interior sashing between the 3 blocks, you need 2 pieces that are 5 inches wide by 19 inches long, because our blocks are going to turn out to be 19 inches, so our sashing has to be that size. So the first thing you want to do here before you get into your cutting, if you're going to mark your squares corner to corner, now's the time to go ahead and mark all of those. And remember, last week I showed you how you can just take a square and a ruler that reaches all the way across. And if you're using black, I have this white chalk pen. If you're using another color fabric, use a pencil, a lead pencil. So you would need, if you're going to do this and not depend on your seam guide like I do on my machine bed, then you need to go ahead and do this. Now, the first thing that's going to have to happen with the sewing is to take one of your A squares or rectangles and place it on here, and you're going to sew on that line just like we did last week on the bottoms of those hearts. And then so you would also have one here already marked off, and sew this one on. Now this is such a tight fit, you probably don't want to. You could, if your cutting is super accurate, I could just about feel okay doing it. You could just go ahead and pin these and do one and then do the other. And then what that's going to make is your what's called a flying geese unit, like this. So that is one of your 4 sides to the middle block. Here, 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 or here. So that's what we need to do. So go ahead and sew on the line, or use your seam tape to guide you to sew this across, and then come back and do the other one. You're going to cut off the outer pieces left over, less a 1/4 inch. So a 1/4 inch this side of your line, just like we did last week on those hearts. But this week it's going to be a flying geese unit. And we're just going to make all these up doing that. And then after that, I'll show you what's next. And don't forget our pressing tip from last week, not to make sure that you don't stretch the bias of the fabric here with our iron, but rather just iron up against it and then pull it back flat, pressing it, not putting too much pressure on it. So sew these and iron these, and then I'll come back and show you what our next step is. You will find that there's quite a bit of waste in the trimming with these. Any flying geese, you're going to be cutting a good amount off here that looks something like this. It's a pretty good size square of material, and you're not only doing it on one side, you're doing it on both sides. There are some videos out there of how to do 4 at a time flying geese. So if you're into really saving fabric and making the best use possible of every inch of your fabric, you may want to go watch 4 at a time flying geese videos. I do not have one, unfortunately. But another thing you can do that's pretty nifty is, before you trim this off, go ahead about 1/2 inch from your original and make another seam. And then you can take your 1/4 inch from one of those lines and cut it. And voila, you have a half square triangle. You can take all of these cut-offs like this and do it this way before you cut it. That's how that happened. And make half square triangles. You could come up with a bunch of these. Here's 12 already, and I'm getting ready to do the other side of all of this. So if you're so inclined to go ahead and sew another line, you'll have another project in process. Just a few tips on how to save some fabric. I have all of my flying geese finished, and I have my corner squares here cut from before, so now I'm ready to assemble my blocks. So you're just going to follow this layout. You're going to make a row here, a big wide row here, and another row equal to the top one there. And then making sure that your black or your white, whatever background you're using, that all of those little tips of those stars are outward and not turned the other way. So let me show you my squares here and how you shouldn't really be afraid of some large prints, because it's going to give you some really cool looking colors. So there's that. Let's put this one here. So you see that I'm putting my star legs or points outward. You don't want to mess up and do this. It's very easy to do. So you don't want the square, the perpendicular corner. You want the isosceles? Is that what that is? I don't know, but it's a triangle that's kind of odd shaped coming out through here like this. So because I used those great big prints, it looks like I have all kinds of different prints in here. So this is going to work out good. And then this is what I need to do. I want to get my 3 big squares, which is A, and put one of those here. So now you're starting to see my giant star emerging. So let's put our other pieces in here. Let's see, I might want to be a little more judicious with these. Kind of make a, how about we do this one here and here like that, and then this one here. Is that too much circle up there? I could do this one. That would be very different. It's not going to matter a whole lot, but it kind of just makes a big backdrop for your big star. So that's the block. So what you need to do is once you have all of these sewn up, just sew rows. So you're going to do this one to this one and this one to this one. Same thing on these 3 and same thing on these 3. And then once you have those rows together, then this row hooks to this one, and then this big section hooks to this one, and you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and get my 3 stars done, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this sashing, because we're going to have 2 pieces of sashing in between the stars like that. So let's get our stars done, then we'll start working on our sashings. I have my 3 blocks sewn. Now all we have to do is put our 5-inch wide by 19 inches long sashing in between these blocks. This is the interior measurement only. You will have 2 of these 5 by 19. And you might say, well, look, this is a little bit longer than this. Does that mean my block is not 19? Well, not necessarily, and it is very minute, the difference, but it looks like your strip might be just, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch off. So what do? Do I cut my strip down by 1/4 of an inch? No, don't do that. Don't do that. Fabric is very forgiving. So you have your long stretch of fabric here with no seams, But you have two seams here that have taken up a little bit of room, and it doesn't mean that you made your seam more than a 1/4 inch. You probably did it according to what your machine led you to do, and it is set at a 1/4 inch. So let's trust that process. And what you want to do is take your pieced block and pin it at the top and the bottom. And yes, and here you can really see how that it's just a little bit like an, I don't know, a 32nd, a 16th, probably a 16th on each end. So you're going to want to pin right together. Get those right lined up and pin that. And then pin it up here, and you're going to have to do a little tiny stretch. Little tiny stretch to get that to get to the edge. And I put my pin down a little bit so I can start sewing and then take my pin out. So now you've got it here, and everything seems to be laying nice and flat. So once you know that you have this lined up good, pick a point near the center. On the center, you don't have to measure, and put another pin. Now, I could probably go to my machine and feel just fine about having those 3 pins in there. But if you want to, you can do a couple of more pins, maybe where these seams are. And what that does is it spreads your seam out to the maximum that it should be. I have already ironed this open, but sometimes there's a little more space in there, a little more give, that can cause it to fit correctly. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to make the mistake of thinking that something is off and then make a cutting adjustment, because 9 times out of 10 that's not the case. And if you do have to make a cutting adjustment, that might mean you have to just remake your block. So let's don't even go there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this together here, and then I'll do this. I'll pull this one this way and sew it from this end so it's on the right side. But make sure your what do you call it? Your seams here, this pieced side, make sure your pieced side is up, and that way you can control your fabric that needs to stretch a little, and you can also make sure your seams don't flip and all of those good things. So I'm going to go ahead and put all my sashings on. Okay, I have my 2 sashings installed. There they are. Now, we need to put a little bit of a coping strip on each end. Coping as in, we need to make it big enough to fit our first row, which was 70 inches. So that means we need strips that are 2 3/4 by 19 inches on each end. So this is my other one for my other end. So I'm going to put those on just like I did these. And then the next time you will see me, if you see me, no, you won't be seeing me. The next time you see this, it will be on the board below my first row. There's our second row. Row 2, Jelly Bar Book Sampler, row quilt. Now, see how I used those 2 fat quarters that were the same? But look, you can't even tell that those are the same fabric. And then my corner pieces are all mixed up and different. I think it looks good. I hope you think it looks good, and I hope yours is turning out well too. So post your pictures of your rows together on the Facebook group so we can see what you're doing. And then also for Finish It Friday, if you want to send in a photo there to the email, we would all love to see how your row quilt is turning out. I'm quite happy with mine. All right, we'll see you next week for that 3rd row. Another mystery, but nothing too hard to do. It'll be fun too. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.